This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by Collide. You need visibility into your fleet of devices to meet security goals and reduce IT tickets. But how do you get that visibility when your fleet is spread across Mac, Windows, and Linux? You get Collide. Collide is an endpoint security solution that gives you real-time access to your fleet's data and a single dashboard for all devices, regardless of their OS. You can answer every question about your fleet without intruding on your workforce. Visit collide.com/cyberwiredaily to find out how. A predatory loan app is discovered embedded in mobile apps. Facebook phishing, GPS disruptions are reported in Russian cities. NSA warns against dismissing Russian offensive cyber capabilities. Farewell, SHA-1. Kevin McGee from Microsoft looks at cyber signals. Our guest is Jason Whitty of USAA to discuss the growing risk from quantum computing. And welcome to the world, Leviathans. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Friday, December 16th, 2022. Zimperium has found a novel predatory loan application, Moneymonger, embedded in mobile apps developed with Flutter. It's found in apps sold through third-party stores. Moneymonger collects a large amount of personal information from its victims and then uses that information in what Zimperium describes as multiple layers of social engineering, ultimately seeking to extort even more money from the marks than the original conditions of their predatory loans themselves. Zimperium concludes that the code they've discovered forms part of a more extensive predatory loan malware campaign previously discovered by K7 Security Labs. So, predatory lending is bad enough, but in this case, the criminals seek to enmesh the victims in a tangle of threats, pressure, and further extortion, with some data theft on the side. Researchers at TrustWave have observed a phishing campaign that informs recipients that their Facebook account will be locked within 48 hours for a copyright violation. The phishing emails themselves are very poorly written, but they contain a link to a fairly convincing Facebook post. The researchers write, instead of the usual phishing link to an external landing page, this mail sample is crafted with a link that points to an actual Facebook post. The content of this Facebook post appears legitimate because it uses a dummy page support profile with the Facebook logo as its display picture. At first glance, the page looks legitimate, but the link provided in this post leads to an external domain. The link in the Facebook post leads to a spoofed version of Facebook's appeals page, hosted on a domain that impersonates Facebook's parent company, Meta. Once you're there, thinking you're about to get your account unlocked, you'll be asked to enter some information. The TrustWave researchers explain, upon clicking the Send button, any information entered in the form by unsuspecting victims will be sent to the cyber criminals, along with the victim's client IP and geolocation information. Inspecting the source code reveals a link to a JavaScript file which contains the function that will retrieve any information provided to its form when triggered. After the victims enter their information, they'll be redirected to Facebook's real website, possibly none the wiser. TrustWave concludes, these fake Facebook violation notifications use real Facebook pages to redirect to external phishing sites. Users are advised to be extra careful when receiving false violation notifications and not to be fooled by the apparent legitimacy of the initial links. Wired reports that GPS signals are being jammed in some Russian cities. Russian electronic warfare operations have periodically disrupted GPS during the present war. The motive in this case may be interference with GPS-guided Ukrainian drones and missiles that have recently struck military targets inside Russia. It's now become a commonplace and correct observation that Russian cyber operations have fallen far short of pre-war expectations. But U.S. NSA Cybersecurity Director Rob Joyce warns against complacency. CyberScoop quotes him as saying during a press briefing on the release of NSA's 2022 retrospective, "I would not encourage anyone to be complacent or be unconcerned about the threats to the energy sector globally. As the war progresses, there's certainly the opportunities for increasing pressure on Russia at the tactical level, which is going to cause them to reevaluate, try different strategies to extricate themselves." So, listen to Mr. Joyce and don't get cocky, kid. The mention of the energy sector is significant, as it had been expected to be a principal target of Russian cyber operators. They had shown the ability to interrupt service across portions of the Ukrainian grid in 2015 and 2016, but those cyber attacks haven't been reprised in the present war. This isn't due to any tenderness about civilian suffering or indiscriminate targeting either, as the drumfire of Russian missile strikes demonstrates. Some of the failure of Russian cyber operators to show up is certainly due to effective Ukrainian defense, but a complete explanation remains a matter for speculation. The report that Cybersecurity Director Joyce was introducing also outlined the support NSA has rendered over the course of 2022 to defensive operations prompted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The NSA Cybersecurity Year in Review report summarizes, "As Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2022 and the U.S. held Russia accountable, intelligence indicated that the Russian government was exploring options for potential cyber attacks against the U.S., including its critical infrastructure sectors. NSA, CISA, and FBI issued cybersecurity advisories in January, February, and April to heighten awareness of the threat and promote understanding of Russian state-sponsored and cybercriminal tactics, techniques, and procedures, so that net defenders could strengthen their defenses. Through operational collaboration with defense industrial-based companies and their service providers, NSA's Cybersecurity Collaboration Center played a leading role in protecting key critical infrastructure sectors. The CCC conducted more than 2,000 bidirectional exchanges in the first 4 months of 2022, sharing NSA's insights, actionable information on Russian cyber TTPs, and building a more fulsome intelligence picture with industry's help. Throughout the conflict in Ukraine, NSA has provided foreign signals intelligence insights that have aided U.S. government leaders, NATO, and the U.S. European Command. It has also provided cryptographic security products to meet unplanned emergency requirements and to support urgent missions. It has rapidly deployed more than 150 communication security devices to support mission operations during the global crisis. It is so long at last to SHA-1. NIST urges those who still use it to move away from the venerable SHA-1 encryption algorithm in service since 1995. They state the SHA-1 algorithm, one of the first widely used methods of protecting electronic information, has reached the end of its useful life, according to security experts at NIST. The agency is now recommending that IT professionals replace SHA-1 in the limited situations where it is still used with newer algorithms that are more secure, that is, with SHA-2 or SHA-3. SHA-1 has grown unacceptably vulnerable to collision attacks. Leaving SHA-1 will be a long goodbye. NIST explains that these things aren't done overnight, stating, "Modules that still use SHA-1 after 2030 will not be permitted for purchase by the federal government. Companies have 8 years to submit updated modules that no longer use SHA-1. Because there is often a backlog of submissions before a deadline, we recommend that developers submit their updated modules well in advance so that CMVP has time to respond." And finally, the U.S. Army has activated the 11th Cyber Battalion, the Leviathans, at Fort Gordon, Georgia, with official ceremonies welcoming the new organization held yesterday. Good luck and good hunting, Leviathans. Coming up after the break, Kevin McGee from Microsoft looks at cyber signals, Our guest is Jason Whitty of USAA to discuss the growing risk from quantum computing. Stay with us.
Hey everyone, it's me, Simone Biles. As a world champion gymnast and a former foster kid, I've faced my fair share of complexity, and I've learned that the concept of controlling complexity is about more than just overcoming our own hardships. It's about helping others overcome theirs too. After all, in the face of enormous complexity, the best not only find a way to adapt to the challenge, they also find a way to give back. From now until the end of the year, Axonius will make a donation to Friends of the Children for every demo completed. For more details and to sign up, go to axonius.com/friends. That's AXONIUS.com/friends.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices and data breaches. With SpyCloud, you now have access to this data, so you can take preventative measures to defend your business against ransomware, account takeover, and hard-to-detect online fraud. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire to act on what criminals know about your business and put an end to cybercrime that affects your bottom line and brand reputation. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. Quantum computing has the potential to greatly increase the speed and power of computers, and with that comes great promise as well as potential risk, particularly to encryption methods. Jason Whitty is Chief Security Officer at insurance and banking organization USAA, and I caught up with him for insights on being quantum ready.
There are things that exist today already in terms of different quantum computing offerings that large-scale technology companies have today. But there's also what we predict is going to happen in the next 10 years, and that's where it gets really interesting and why we're talking about it now. Quantum computing certainly has the promise of delivering tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even tens of millions of times more compute capacity than classic computing environments have. So that can, really go to solving some really, really, really large challenges that we couldn't do with today's compute environment. But also from a security standpoint, having that much compute power at your fingertips roughly 10 years from now puts asymmetric cryptography at real risk of being decryptable at that time frame. And because we're using asymmetric encryption in so many different things like SSL or TLS or just, HTTPS in general, all of that traffic being hoovered up by, military intelligence in several countries for the purpose of being able to decrypt that 10 years from now is certainly, a concern. So that's why I think we're talking about that now. And there's a lot to unpack there.
And where do we stand in terms of having confidence in the timeline with the research that we're seeing, the announcements we've seen made? Where do we stand there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. One of the things that happened 5 years ago was that there was a prediction that it would take about 5 years for there to be quantum parity. So being able to calculate, using a quantum computer, the same thing that you could do with a regular classic computer. And so if that was 5 years ago, that actually happened about 3 years ago. So it was greatly accelerated to have this prediction that it was going to take 5 years when it actually took 2. Similarly, for a very narrow scope, quantum superiority, where you can actually calculate the thing faster using a quantum computer than a classic one, was predicted to be several years after that, and it actually happened the same year. So I would say our ability to predict where this technology is going has been kind of, not a whole lot of confidence in terms of, is it really like a decade from now, or is it 2 decades from now, or is it like a year from now? However, what I would say is that we generally are stating that quantum things are going to happen in the 5 to 10 to 20 year time frame. And we're generally seeing that those things are happening faster than most of the predictions. But across the scientific community, having quantum computers at the level where they can actually break asymmetric encryption, there is general consensus right now that that problem is about 10 to 12 years from now. And because it's 10 to 12 years from now, we should be very thoughtful about what does that mean for the next 5 years in terms of new algorithms coming online that are in the post-quantum encryption environment, PQE. We will then need to understand where do we have traditional algorithms and inventory all of those, traditional algorithms, then plan on replacing them with these post-quantum encryption algorithms. And then how long is that rollout going to take? And is that going to be able to be done by the time, the threat landscape around quantum changes?
What is your sense in terms of urgency for folks who are responsible for security? To what degree should they be actively pursuing solutions for their own environments?
Yeah, so the National Institute of Standards and Technology has recently come up with a small number of PQE replacement algorithms, post-quantum encryption replacement algorithms. So now it is really on all of us to make sure that we start in the inventorying phase to ensure that we have the ability to, migrate to these new algorithms, and we know where they're in use today. Then there's the phase of actually doing the migration. And then there is along that same time frame, let's just say, for argument's sake, that the inventory might take you 2 or 3 years and the migration might take you 2 or 3 years, and you actually start the migration, in parallel. Along that roughly 6-year window, hypothetically, you also want to be able to decouple as much as possible the encryption and the decryption and the key management processes, so that you have crypto agility, so that if you get to the end of that 6-year time frame, and now all of a sudden something's wrong with one of the algorithms, or there's some breakthrough that's happened, you have the ability to switch out again, and you have an agile way of doing your sort of key change or algorithm changes.
Is there a hit that organizations could take in terms of performance by implementing some of these more advanced algorithms, or does the asymmetry mean that that's not so much of an issue?
No, it could certainly be an issue. And the whole thing with post-quantum encryption is it is classically computed algorithms using classic computers that are more resistant to quantum computers attacking those algorithms. A lot of different theoretical algorithms that are out there today, they are all trying to balance the performance hit with the additional security that you get with the algorithm. But certainly that's part of the process is understanding, where do you take that hit, and can you horizontally scale to just deal with it? Or do you have to, have bigger compute capacity on an individual server by server basis?
That's Jason Whitty from USAA. There's a lot more to this conversation. If you want to hear more, head on over to the CyberWire Pro and sign up for Interview Selects, where you'll get access to this and many more extended interviews. And joining me once again is Kevin McGee. He's the Chief Security Officer at Microsoft Canada. Kevin, always great to welcome you back to the show. You and your colleagues at Microsoft recently released a report. It's, I believe, titled the Cyber Signals Digital Briefing. This is the second one you all have put out. Can we go through some of the highlights here from this report?
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me back. It's always great to chat with you. This is a new quarterly research report. This is our second edition we've come out with, and we're taking a different approach. The vendor report market's kind of crowded. We want to make sure we're adding value. So this report's really focused, in my mind, on not listening to what's happening on the dark market and on the chat boards and whatnot, and sort of reporting, and not focused for super highly technical. It's more like a signals intelligence report where we're listening to the 40, 50, I'm not sure how many trillion signals we have at this point across our global platform. And we're building intelligence that can be shared with business leaders. So this is a report that you can share with the business leaders in your organization, with your senior executives, with your board of directors, to help them understand some of the challenges you are seeing in the marketplace. But it's not driven on sort of hearsay or observations. It's driven on hard data that we're seeing from our platform. So I think that's the unique place that we're trying to carve out in educating the vendor community and also our customer base.
Can we dig into some of the specifics here? What are some of the things that caught your eye?
Yeah, this one is focused on ransomware, and it's entitled "Extortion Economics: Ransomware's New Business Model." And my read of it is really the days of the ma and pa sole proprietor hacking team is kind of done. We're seeing a professionalization and industrialization of the ransomware industry. And I often joke that you'll run into a hacker now and the criminal markets. They don't want to be called a hacker. They want to be called an extortion engineer. I think that's the phase of ransomware we're seeing going through. But what does that mean in real terms? Distributed networks. Cybercrime is becoming a gig economy. There's a great deal of focus on innovation. We're seeing a move to subscription-based business models, ransomware as a service, initial access brokers. You've covered a lot of this on the podcast, which you've seen more and more evidence of this in the marketplace as well. We're also seeing adoption of affiliate marketing and multi-level marketing and human-operated approaches. They're running these more like businesses and distributed businesses as opposed to sort of how we envision the traditional hacking team. And it's a profound change in the business models, which presents some threats, and it also presents some opportunities for us as well.
Yeah, can we talk about some of those opportunities? I mean, what in your mind are the possibilities in terms of disruption?
I think, for the short term, it's going to get worse because they're evolving faster than we are. But what is happening in the back end, and I hope I'm proven right in there, is in order to build these bigger markets where you're having less sophisticated people join affiliate networks and whatnot, you have to standardize and you have to build standard products and build things that are consistent. Because if you're providing ransomware as a service and you need to provide an upgrade, you're now acting like a software vendor as a cyber criminal, and you need to run that business. So standardization means they're going to continue to use the same tactics. They may lower the tactics, they may make them easier and whatnot. As that continues, that gives us a chance to, when we defend against a larger segment of these attacks. So short term, and I don't know what short term means in cybersecurity, it could be weeks, it could be years. I think there will be more pain, but as we see them try and really build business models that are global and distributed, they're going to suffer the same challenges that any other business faces. And that gives us as defenders a chance to find new ways to build defenses.
Are you optimistic that we're on the right path here, that this is something that's achievable?
Well, I have to be, Dave, or I wouldn't be able to do my job. I want to think,
you are, yes, after all, Canadian.
Yeah, yes, and I'm sorry, but we have to really look at capitalizing on some of these opportunities and thinking forward of how we're going to address these challenges. We're seeing the transition in the cyber criminals from highly technical operated attacks to more business email compromise, more focusing on the business. That's something as an organization we can respond to. Our tech folks, when we were trying to talk to senior executives and whatnot about building defenses, they didn't understand our language. They understand the language of extortion. They understand the language of affiliate model ransomware. I think, again, as we standardize and as we see cyber criminals become more like a business, the private sector, who's pretty good at business and competition, will eventually be much better equipped and will be able to harness the entire resources of the organization at layer 9, as Bruce Schneider would say, to sort of combat and defend against some of these attacks. So I am optimistic. I do think we'll go through some pain and a lot more of it till we get there. But eventually, every time there's a new technological advance, the attacker-defender balance shifts. Eventually, I believe it will come back into our favor.
Yeah, I can't help wondering if, as you say, that the professionalism continues here, but I don't think it's ever going to go away completely, but I wonder if we might reach a point where it exists mostly at the nuisance level, where it's not an existential threat to your business. It's just one of many risks that you have to plan for, but it can be dealt with.
And I think that's where it was, a bespoke, one-off type of highly creative hackers in a very immature market that didn't know how to deal with it. Now we're having a more commoditized attack approach, a more institutionalized approach to cybercrime. We're getting every year more of an understanding and integrating into resilience, not just security on the business side. So I think you're right. At some point, it will become a cost of doing business, and we will understand how to deal with that. That's going to take time. That's going to take education. That's going to take really the integration of cybersecurity to be operationalized throughout the organization, not just still in the tech department. And in my career, I've really seen that change. I mean, there was, maybe 5, 10, 20 of us in the industry, it seemed, when I got started a few years ago. And now everyone's talking about cybersecurity in all aspects of the business. And if you told me that would have happened so quickly as it did, I would have been surprised 10 years ago to hear you say that. So again, I'm optimistic. I think when we're in the trenches and we're fighting it every day, it can seem like it's never ending. But I do see some light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully it is, as they proverbially say, not a train.
That's right. All right. Well, Kevin McGee, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. Find out more about sponsoring our programs at thecyberwire.com/sponsor. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Be sure to check out Research Saturday and my conversation with Orr Katz from Akamai. We're discussing highly sophisticated phishing scams and how they're abusing holiday sentiment. That's Research Saturday. Check it out. The CyberWire podcast is a production of N2K Networks, proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brendan Karpf, Eliana White, Peru Prakash, Liz Irvin, Rachel Gelfand, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Maria Vermatsis, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Millie Lardy, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Catherine Murphy, Janine Daly, Jim Hoshite, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, Simone Petrella, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week. Hey everybody, Dave here. We love what we do here at the CyberWire and are proud to be able to provide news and insights that top leaders and decision makers rely on every day. We'd like to give a huge thanks to our many sponsors that make all of this possible and invite your company to join them in reaching over 250,000 unique listeners and 50,000 readers each week. Find out about opportunities to bring your brand and messages to the most influential audience in cybersecurity. Visit thecyberwire.com/sponsorship and join in on the action.